Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today we're officially diving into the Regulation C VGC rule set. This rule set started in the beginning of April and introduces the 4 Treasures of Rune into the competitive format. Previously, Wo-Chien, Qianpao, Ting Lu, and Qiyu were banned from competitive VGC, but now all 4 of them are legal, and as you may imagine, they drastically impact how players approach team building and battling in this format. To kick off the Regulation C rule set, I wanted to feature one of the strongest early meta teams. This team finished in the top 4 of the Fort Wayne Regional Championships, which took place on the very first weekend of April, and it's incredibly strong and consistent. Features a core of Amoonguss, Arcanine, Palafin, which has already been really good throughout Scarlet and Violet VGC, and rounds things off with Booster Energy Flutter Mane, Black Glasses Kingambit with Sword Stance, and Assault Vest Ting Lu. Ting Lu in particular right now is just one of the best Pokemon in the format. It's incredibly bulky, has an incredible ability obviously, and also can deal really significant amounts of damage through the combination of a pretty high base attack. This team also has How Arcanine to further increase Ting Lu's attack, and Ruination is also just really good in chipping away at your opponent. So yeah, as always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down below. And thank you so much as always for watching. I took a good amount of time off in the end of March to go on vacation, and that was really nice. It was really refreshing, but it was also the longest time I've gone in Scarlet and Violet without making content, and I was just dying to get back and start making videos, and I'm just itching to play Regulation C. I actually haven't really played any Regulation C outside of some practice games for this team in particular, and so I am really excited to dive into this format kind of with a fresh mindset with all of you. And so thank you so much as always for watching. If you enjoyed, I'd really appreciate if you consider leaving a like on the video or subscribing to the channel. We're getting so close to 200,000 subscribers, and it'll make me so happy to hit that by the end of this month. But thank you so much as always for watching and for your support. It really means a lot. So let's dive into Regulation C. First of all, a huge thank you to Luca for building and sharing this team, and a huge congratulations to him as well for finishing the top 4 of the Fort Wayne Regional Championships with this exact composition. Luca also finished in the top 4 of the Charlotte Regional Championships just the weekend before Fort Wayne, so he's having an incredible run of events so far. And yeah, I think this team is just one of the most consistent teams that you can try out in early Regulation C. Rental and Pace are included down in the description below, as well as at Luca's Twitter. And question of the day, I want to know what your early thoughts on the format are down in the comment section below. The first Pokemon to talk about on this team is Ting Lu. Now, Ting Lu is just one of the, I feel like, more consistent Rune Pokemon because it is incredibly bulky, obviously has an amazing ability which decreases the damage of special attackers, and also can just deal really consistent damage with base 110 attack. So the idea behind this Ting Lu is that it can just often stay on the field for a really long time and chip away at your opponent. The thing about Ting Lu is that it's not often going to actually pick up one-hit knockouts unless it gets Howl boosts from the Arcanine, or it's going for something like Heavy Slam into, for example, a Flutter Mane. But the point of Ting Lu is that it can stay on the field for a really long time and slowly just chip away at your opponent. And it's really difficult to knock out, especially with the Assault Vest, as well as a potential defensive Terra in Grass Terra. Grass Terra is helpful for a bunch of different reasons, but is very useful against Amoonguss, which otherwise gives this Pokemon a fair amount of trouble. So the idea behind Ting Lu is have it on the field, decrease your opponent's special attack, use Ruination to kind of chip away at really bulky Pokemon, and don't discount the amount of damage that Stomping Tantrum, Earthquake, and Heavy Slam can do. Now, Fissure is also an option on Ting Lu, but I think Stomping and Earthquake is just a little bit more consistent on this set, and just gives you more optionality because Earthquake allows you to ignore redirection, which is really nice, and can also be really valuable into teams that are like ultra offensive, for example. And so to support the Ting Lu, you've got the classic kind of fire, water, grass core of Arcanine, Palafin, and Amoonguss. The main thing to call out here is the Arcanine. It's got a Flying Terra, which I would say has not been super common on Arcanine thus far in Scarlet and Violet VGC, but Flying Terra is really nice to help you get around Earthquake. Otherwise, as you'll notice, the team just doesn't have any immunities to ground type damage, or even resistances, which can be pretty scary. So Flying Terra is really important here. Safety Goggles to give you another answer against Amoonguss. You've got Flare Blitz, Will-O-Wisp, Extreme Speed, all which are pretty standard, but the main thing to call out here is that the Arcanine has Howl. Now, Howl is a really interesting tech that allows you to raise both Arcanine as well as its partner's attack by 1, and so that's really useful when you've got Ting Lu, Palafin, Kingambit next to it, right? And so this team kind of takes advantage of the fact that there are a lot of physical attackers, and that makes sense. You don't really want to support Ting Lu with too many special attackers because Vessel of Ruin can also work against you as it decreases all Pokemon special attack other than Ting Lu's by to a 0.75x multiplier. And so you do have one special attacker on this team. It's Flutter Mane. This is a modest booster energy Flutter Mane, and so you get a special attack boost rather than a speed boost. So the idea is that it can just deal a large amount of damage while not committing an item such as Choice Specs, which locks you into a move, or Life Orb, which also slowly chips away at your own health. And so, yeah, it's just a strong Flutter Mane that's also somewhat bulky with 76 HP and 100 defense EVs. But keep in mind, because you're running this booster energy set, you're not running max speed, and as a result, you might be outsped by opposing Flutter Manes, for example. So that's one thing to keep an eye out for. Palafin here is really standard. This Pokemon's just been incredible throughout Scarlet and Violet VGC, and this set isn't really any different. Very standard, just max HP, max attack. And Palafin's job is pretty simple, right? You lead with it early, either put on pressure with it and consider even dealing damage with it, or more likely pivot it out and then bring it back out and then just close up the game with it. Palafin on this team can often just carry games single-handedly, especially if your team doesn't have really any answers to a strong water-type Pokemon in damage, and so it continues to just be an absolute dominant force in this format. Amoonguss is a Pokemon I talked about earlier. This isn't really anything too out of the ordinary, but the one thing to call out is the Rocky Helmet. Rocky Helmet allows you to kind of chip away your opponent's physical attackers, which is really nice, and you've got a Steel Terra type here as well. And so the idea behind Amoonguss here is that this team is already really bulky. You can heal up even more with Pollen Puff, right? Like Ting Lu with Pollen Puff support, Arcanine with Pollen Puff support. It's just kind of a nightmare to go up against, and often like these Pokemon will take a lot of damage, not necessarily faint. You position Amoonguss in, get that Pollen Puff off, and kind of negates a lot of work that your opponent has put in up until that point. The final Pokemon is Kingambit, and this Kingambit set is really interesting because it's Swords Dance double Dark type attack with Protect and Black Glasses. Up until now, it feels like one of the most common Kingambit items was Assault Vest, but obviously Assault Vest is already taken up on Ting Lu. And the idea behind this Kingambit set is that it can just stay on the field for a long time and deal massive amounts of damage. Arcanine right now is one of the most common Pokemon in the format, so Kingambit takes advantage of opposing Intimidates, which is really nice. And Swords Dance plus, Defiant plus Black Glasses plus Dark Terra, that's a lot of potential damage multipliers for your Dark type attacks, and this Pokemon can snowball very, very quickly if positioned correctly. Amoonguss, in addition, once again, really nice for a setup-oriented Pokemon like this, because you can then heal up Kingambit further. And I said setup oriented, but Kingambit doesn't necessarily need a Swords Dance to start sweeping. Like, it's already base 135 attack with max attack investment, so it does pretty significant damage, right, even before a Swords Dance. But Dark Terra plus Black Glasses plus Kowtow Cleave means that this thing can very quickly sweep through teams, especially if it gets any attack boosts. So honestly, this team is so flexible. There's so many different ways that you can play with it. I think often the first question I ask myself is, okay, how good is Palafin into my opponent's team? Because if it's good, then often I'll consider trying to find the best lead with Palafin so that I can pivot Palafin out and then bring it back into the battle, transform forms, and then go from there. So I think Palafin honestly works with really any of these Pokemon as leads, but I often like Palafin Arcanine in particular, get an Intimidate off, pressure Will-O-Wisp, and then switch out Palafin. I think it's also nice to switch Palafin often out into one of like Ting Lu, Amoonguss, or Arcanine, so Arcanine in the back could also work. I've led like Flutter Mane Palafin, where I exert a lot of offensive pressure here, maybe go for a Protect, switch Palafin out into Arcanine or Ting Lu, and then go from there. But like I mentioned, I think Palafin can really work with any of these Pokemon as leads. And so if you're not leading Palafin, obviously there's some other things to consider. The main thing to note with this team is you obviously don't really want Flutter Mane and Ting Lu out on the field at the same time. Ideally, if you, unless like the special attack drop on Flutter Mane is like negligible, and that's because they just don't necessarily always have the best synergy. That being said, don't have that as a hard rule, right? Like, you should consider positions where both of these can still be really good next to each other. But as a result, like I probably wouldn't lead Flutter Mane Ting Lu unless like my opponent's team was just really weak into that combination in particular. Other leads that I've gone with, I think like you could consider Amoonguss Kingambit, just go for Rage Powder into Swords Dance immediately and start exerting pressure there. Arcanine Flutter Mane is really strong, I would say. I mentioned Arcanine Palafin earlier. Flutter Mane Gambit applies a lot of offensive pressure as well. So yeah, ends up being pretty team dependent, but for me, a lot of the games I often bring in Palafin, so Palafin's kind of the starting point, and then I go from there. So that's it for a quick breakdown. Let's quickly highlight some weaknesses. So for weaknesses that I've run into personally, there are a couple of things that I'll point out. The first thing is that the Arcanine set here is really interesting because, of course, it has Howl as attack, but as a result, you don't have Protect, meaning that the Arcanine slot is left a little bit more exposed. In addition, you don't have Protect on Ting Lu, so often if your opponents know that, they can double up onto those slots very consistently to get knockouts onto them, and that can be a little bit scary. I think Ting Lu, especially when you're running the Assault Vest set, is obviously just vulnerable to attacks that can hit it for super effective damage, like Water-type attacks, Ice-type attacks, and Fighting-type attacks, for example. You do have Grass Terra to get around it, but Flying plus Ice, for example, can be a really nasty combo, because Ice does super effective damage before and after, so something like Chien-Pao, for example, in particular, can exert pressure, but yeah, anything with Flying Terra, Terra Blast, for example, can also also be pretty scary, especially because it kind of covers for the Grass Terra. So yeah, the lack of Protect and kind of the potential defensive holes from Ting Lu are two things you could take advantage of. One other thing to notice that this team has a ton of priority. There's Jet Punch on Palafin, the Extreme Speed from Arcanine, Sucker Punch from Kingambit. So if you have ways to block priority, that can be really valuable. For example, Farigiraf is something that's popping up a little bit more in this format in particular because of the amount of priority that exists. Farigiraf actually matches up fairly well into a lot of the common Pokemon as well. You can consider other things like Indeedee or Serena, for example, to stop the priority as well. But yeah, like shutting down priority is a big deal for this team because so much of its offense does rely on these priority attacks. So that's one other thing to think for. Another thing to call out is that like ground Pokemon and damage still is just really consistent across the board here, especially something like a Great Tusk. Yeah, you do have the Flying Terra on Arcanine, but let's say you are able to bait out a Terra from something else earlier on, then ground type attacks really just have very little answers at all, right? One other thing to note is like Arcanine obviously has Will-O-Wisp, which can be quite good into a lot of those physical attackers, but if your opponent has a Fire Terra, for example, or a defensive ability that helps them take advantage of Arcanine, for example, whether it be Defiant on opposing Kingambit or Annihilate, things can get a little bit scary. And so Arcanine, of course, is a very good answer into a lot of physical attackers, but won't necessarily always just solve your problems immediately. So that's one other thing to watch out for. And then Flutter Mane here isn't max speed, so one thing that I've often kind of run into trouble with, not with just this team, but in general, is opposing Flutter Mane's outspeeding me. This Flutter Mane actually is fairly speedy. Like modest 220 is more than a lot of Choice Specs Flutter Manes in Series 2, but if you're up against like a max speed Flutter Mane, timid max speed, for example, that can be scary. One other thing is if you're going up against opposing Flutter Manes, you reveal pretty big information with the Booster Energy Photosynthesis combo, and so your opponent will see that you have a special attack boost rather than a speed boost, and sometimes they can leverage that to their advantage. So think about that when you're playing against opposing Flutter Manes. But those are just a couple of things I've noted. Let's get into the games. Our very first match of Regulation C, and we're actually up against a Series 2 team. I think one interesting thing is that a lot of the top performing teams from the first regionals of Regulation C did not actually have a Room Pokemon, so you don't need a Room Pokemon on your team. That being said, this one's interesting because Ting Lu is actually quite weak to water, obviously, from the opposing side. But lowering Flutter Mane's special attack can be valuable and also has super effective damage into a lot of my opponent's team. Our Palafin can take advantage of their Intimidate. Sorry, not their Intimidate, their Rain. This is a matchup where all the Pokemon feel decent. Their Amoonguss makes me want to bring Arcanine. I had a practice match where I just didn't bring Arcanine, and Amoonguss kind of caused a lot of issues. I think generally Palafin Arcanine is a pretty safe lead with Flutter in the back, and then Ting Lu is the fourth. I think Gambit's solid here. The main thing Gambit has to worry about is that they have Iron Hands, and it's a Dark Terror on the Kingambit, so yeah, like we just don't do much damage to the hands. Hands completely kind of beats us in a 1v1. I think in a best of 3, there's a lot of reason to bring it, especially if they like prioritize the Arcanine on their side, for example. Getting a single Defiant boost would be huge, but yeah, I just don't love the matchup in a hands. And like maybe my opponent just doesn't bring Iron Hands, but the reality is that if they do and I have Gambit out, it's like a very one-sided matchup between those two Pokemon. And there's the Iron Hands. So it's gonna be Hands plus Palafin from their end. A lot of interesting things they could do here, because you could actually just straight up like attack with Hands here. You could actually just like attack with Arcanine into Arcanine here as well. I personally honestly don't even mind a double switch here, I think. Will-O-Wisp pressure from this is looking really good right now. You would think their Palafin switches. I mean, if I were my opponent, I would probably just fake out Arcanine and then switch Palafin out into, say, Pelipper. It's pretty safe for them to go for. I'm actually down a double switch here. It seems a little bit aggressive because Arcanine's in a really good spot right now, but I think it's somewhat safe. I mean, it's a -1 Palafin, and we position in Ting Lu while also getting Flutter's, special attack boosted. The downside is obviously having Ting Lu and Flutter on the field simultaneously is a little bit counterintuitive. They bring Amoonguss out. Okay, so yeah, Arcanine's looking really good. We could also go for Grass Terra Ting Lu now to be immune to Amoonguss's Rage Powders and Spores. Yeah, I actually think Grass Terra Ting Lu is really good here, especially given that we know they have Palafin in the back already. Good Volt Switch. They risked Will-O-Wisp into the Iron Hand slot there that turn, but ends up working out pretty well for them. I would expect them to bring Palafin back out right now. Yep. This is pretty interesting. Basically, I can Grass Terra here with Ting Lu immediately. The question is, like, do they just Jet Punch into Flutter Mane right now? Because I could also switch Ting Lu back out into Arcanine. I don't know. It makes sense to also consider for them Wave Crash Ting Lu. Spore into Flutter. I'm down to switch Flutter out into Arcanine right now. Go for a Terra here. And then Ruination into their Palafin. That was a nice turn one by my opponent, because I think I had the ability to go for Will-O-Wisp onto hands. But given that they have Volt Switch, it's probably just fake out Volt Switch, Close Combat, or Drain Punch, and then Wild Charge. But Grass Ting Lu here should be excellent for us. It walls Palafin decently well. It can't get spored by Amoonguss. So, that's all good news. This is why I didn't want to bring Kingambit into the matchup, right? Like, it's just not very good into the Iron Hands, but also, like, it would take a while to get a Swords Dance up and then start attacking with it as well. Okay, they go for Protect, but that's fine. They do bait out a kind of Terra from my end, but, you know, Ting Lu gets to be put into a really good spot. I actually think we can also consider just going for Howl right now with Arcanine. The other debate is whether or not I want to consider, like, a Will-O-Wisp, for example, onto the Palafin slot. I think Howl's no joke here, though, honestly. I could also switch Arcanine out, because maybe they go, like, Water Terra and then just Jet Punch into us. Probably safer to switch Arcanine out into Palafin here. Okay, I'm going to switch, and I'm actually going to go for the Ruination now onto the Amoonguss slot. Because, like, I want to try to ideally eliminate Amoonguss as quickly as possible from this point on. I could have targeted it last turn, but I was trying to put on pressure against Palafin. I think in retrospect, maybe Amoonguss was just better if I'm now putting my priority into it. Okay, they go for Haste. That's pretty cool. If I went for Howl, actually, then it would not have worked out well for me there. Nation gets to activate. They do Spore into the Arcanine slot. Yeah, so the interesting thing is with Arcanine there, I could have just gone for, like, Flare Blitz, double up onto the Amoonguss, but Amoonguss could have protected there, right, as Palafin attacks, which is kind of awkward, so don't love that. What do I want to do right now? Like, I think switching back out into Arcanine is fine, generally. Part of me wants to just stay in with Palafin here, honestly. Yeah, and burn a turn. No, go for Stomping Tantrum onto Amoonguss. Amoonguss switches, okay. Into Iron Hands, nice. That's a huge stomping we get off into that slot then. Palafin burns a turn of sleep. Nice, and they Wave Crash, probably expecting Arcanine to switch in. That's exactly why I didn't want to switch in. So you also end up taking a fair amount of recoil damage from that. Ting Lu gets a nice Stomping Tantrum off. Just under half. I don't think I want to pivot in Arcanine right now. I think I'll just stay in here. Wave Crash and Stomping into this slot. Yeah, I think if we get a quick Wake Up here, things will be really good for us. They go for another Wave Crash with their Palafin onto us. Palafin does manage to Wake Up on our end. Nice. So I get a Wave Crash off into their side. That KOs. Nice. Trading pretty aggressively this turn, but I think this trade benefits me pretty significantly, honestly. I think Grass Terra Ting Lu in general is just putting in a ton of work for me right now. Get Stomping Tantrum off into Palafin. Nice damage there. Let's pivot out into Arcanine finally. The main thing in this, I think, was to not like get greedy and try to pivot in Arcanine too early. The early wake up with Palafin was quite lucky for sure. They bring out Flutter Mane. That's fine by me. Yeah, so the reality is with Grass Terra, Ting Lu with the Salt Vest and our ability, like my opponent kind of struggles just to beat Ting Lu right now, right? This turn, I'm honestly happy to go for a... What do I want to do here? Honestly, I don't think Flutter Mane's that valuable for me at this point. Could see this extreme speeding. Heavy Slam into Flutter Mane here would kind of just crush them. I think I'm interested in Flare Blitzing the Palafin slot and then Heavy Slamming into Flutter Mane. And the reason for this is because I think Palafin switching out into Amoonguss was a play my opponent could have made. They end up staying in though, which is a nice play by them. Maybe a Terra from Flutter as well into Fire Terra. Ooh, okay. That makes this turn really interesting. Mystical Fire as well. Huh. Yeah, things just got really interesting. Especially because I don't KO with Flare Blitz. They're going to Wave Crush and KO themselves. I definitely don't expect Fire Terra Mystical Fire Flutter Mane in this endgame. That's like the only thing they could have to give me trouble here. Wow. Well, that's pretty scary. If I had switched Flutter out, I think Arcanine plus Ting Lu would have had this endgame for sure. Heavy Slam still does so much damage there. I still feel okay about the position. Kind of comes down to the sets here in the end. Like, because you can't Spore me, and another Mystical Fire won't KO me. I'm not sure Pollen Puff plus Mystical Fire also like, I don't think that would KO either, so I want to just protect here and click Earthquake right now. Yeah, given how much Heavy Slam did, I'm pretty sure EQ just KOs. So we're going to protect with Flutter. Nice. The Rage Powder, Mystical Fire should not KO us, then it's a 2v1 in which I think we should just win. So unless they crit here, we should be good. Nice, 17 HP. My fear was that they had Protect on Flutter and they go for Protect plus like a Pollen Puff on a Ting Lu, then finish me off with a Mystical Fire. Might be Choice Specs Flutter given their damage output, but I can't say I really know my Fire Flutter, Mystical Fire Terra calcs from Choice Specs Flutter into Grass Terra Ting Lu with our ability, which is so many things to keep track of. But what a first game here. Now we can just Shadow Ball plus Stomping Tantrum. And yeah, the thing is, Amoonguss like just can't do enough damage to obviously the combo of the Shadow Ball. Actually, that was a crit, and even then, doesn't do that much. But obviously, part of that is because of Ting Lu's ability. But Stomping finishes it off. Amoonguss didn't have recovery here, so yeah, like I guess because of Rocky Helmet, would we have fainted here? Let's see. We would have. So it would have been interesting, like maybe Amoonguss survives with a Sliver, but I don't think Amoonguss is ever winning the 1v1 against Flutter Mane, nor does that recovery, so all we have to do is just keep clicking Shadow Ball, eventually wake up and get the KO. And maybe even without the crit, the Stomping just gets the knockout anyway. But yeah, I think that this game highlighted how good the Grass AV Ting Lu is, right? Like essentially by going for the Terra, it prevented Spores from the Amoonguss, which was really nice. We put on a lot of pressure with it. I think the main thing in this game was, yeah, just like putting Ting Lu into a pretty comfortable position and trying to position around the Palafin, because Palafin was pretty scary ultimately, right? I think we could have considered bringing Amoonguss into this matchup over one of the three, maybe over Flutter, for example, because Amoonguss plus Ting Lu would have been an incredible combo, but I like the idea of bringing Flutter to pressure the Iron Hands a little bit more from my opponent's end. So yeah, but that is the power of Ting Lu in this format. All right, very cool team for this next one. That's a Wo-Chien, Talonflame Tyranitar, Houndstone Scizor, and the Sandy Shocks. Huh. Scizor is scary. This feels like a really good game generally for Palafin. I don't think I want to bring Amoonguss into a team with Talonflame Scizor. I don't know. Amoonguss, like a single sleep, is still so good in this format, though, so it's always worth considering. I'm leaning towards the top 4, though. Like, Palafin plus Flutter lead with Arcanine plus Ting Lu in the back. The idea is with this turn, when I can pivot Palafin out into Arcanine and just attack offensively with Flutter Mane immediately. I think Fairy Terror with Flutter here is also pretty solid. Ting Lu in general is okay. Scizor is actually quite scary, right? Like, it puts on super effective pressure on a Flutter Mane as well as Ting Lu, but that's why Arcanine exists. It's going to be Scizor and Sandy Shocks. Okay. This is definitely an interesting lead. Do they have booster on Sandy? They don't. I'm generally okay. I think maybe aggressively trading Flutter Mane here. I just worry about the Wo-Chien in the back if I lose Flutter, but I also worry about a Swords Dance coming out from Scizor immediately. Pivot Arcanine in, and just Shadow Ball Scizor turn 1 is what I'm thinking. Get an Intimidate off. They could be Clear Amulet, I guess, which would actually be a major problem for me. I think Scizor is extremely strong in this format relative to the previous ones. And it is Clear Amulet. Oh, boy. That's bad news for me. They didn't go for Bullet Punch, though, at least. So I walk away with a lot more than I really should have. Life Orb Sandy Shocks as well, okay. Now, this is where I'm curious. If you're not going for Bullet Punch, are you Swords Dancing? Because if so, I just got away with a lot on that turn 1 that I shouldn't have. The lack of Bullet Punch makes sense, though, because from my opponent's perspective, you might expect me to just go for a Protect or a Defensive Terra, for example, so Swords Dance here would generally seem pretty free. Either way, I think if it was just Bullet Punch immediately and I lose Flutter Mane, I'm in terrible shape after turn 1, so we're lucky that was not what came out. Palafin comes out. Yeah, it is Swords Dance. Okay. So Palafin with Jet Punch right now is extremely well positioned into my opponent's 2. Really 3. Probably wanted to like just Terra Palafin, honestly. Tailwind here, Bullet Punch here makes sense. So I could Flare Blitz Protect. Pretty obvious play. I actually went for Extreme Speed Shadow Ball because I thought Scizor would protect, and it does, yeah. I don't know if that read was necessary, though. Like, even though it looks good for me now, like, I don't feel like it was actually the most optimal play. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, the idea is Flutter Mane can outspeed Talonflame here, and so we just break Gale Wings. They actually survive impressively. What? Citrus Talonflame. Wow, that's really interesting. No, Agua. And they go for Brave Bird instead. Okay. What a swing of events there. Agua Berry Talonflame. Wow. That's fascinating. Very cool. Man, E-Speed doesn't even KO this, given how bulky it is. That's wild. Bullet Punch can KO either of my Pokemon right now. If I were my opponent, I would Bullet Punch Flutter Mane, and then Tailwind with Talonflame. I'm down to Flare Blitz and switch out. If they end up going for Bullet Punch onto Arcanine to KO me, that's fine. I just pressure you with Jet Punch next turn. I did not expect that Talonflame set, though. Protect as well. Wow, Protect Agua Fairy with Brave Bird. Fascinating. Nice. It's hefty damage, though. Scizor is no joke. It really is no joke, but fortunately we managed to get away with a decent amount in this one. Like I said, this game would be completely different if Bullet Punch just went on to the Flutter Mane on turn 1 of this battle. Unfortunately, that did not come out. So right now, I'd say we have a pretty big advantage. Wo-Chien is my opponent's final Pokemon. increasing everyone's attack. It's fine, right? I mean, I don't mind just clicking Will-O-Wisp here onto this. And Jet Punch is very safe onto the Talonflame slot. I feel like I'm really well positioned right now. What could go wrong for me here? Like, the Talonflame slot is going to get knocked out. Like, if you switch into the Sandy Shocks, that also should get KO'd. And I'm pressuring Will-O-Wisp. You no longer have priority on Talonflame as well. So, I guess the worst case is I miss Will-O-Wisp. Or, like, double protect. And I miss Will-O-Wisp. That would be the worst case right now. But I feel very good about the position currently. The main thing is that Terra has not come out from either end. Okay, Wo-Chien protects. That's fine. Talon should just go down here. Yep. So I think this makes sense. You bring out Sandy Shocks and you probably go for a defensive Terra with it so that it survives Jet Punch. But then you've gone for a defensive Terra with Sandy Shocks and I have Flutter Mane ready to clean up the game with Dazzling Gleam. So I think we should be good here. Sandy Shocks comes back out. Flutter is looking very good. I guess the one awkward thing is if I have Ting Lu and Flutter out next to each other, I think we can probably just pivot Arcanine out into Ting Lu right now. Actually, I think Arcanine into Ting Lu and protect Palafin here is very safe. Because I think Ting Lu at this point can very easily just take care of the Sandy Shocks. I was like, what is that Pokemon called? There's the Terra. Yep. I would guess Sandy Shocks Terra, but let's see. And Flutter Mane with the Fairy Terra in the back is looking very good at this point, obviously. Maybe Electric Terra on that. Makes sense. Ting Lu just completely walls this right now. The only thing I was really worried about is like Fairy Terra, Terra Blast, but even then. Palafin protects. Yep, T-Bolt into that slot. What you got for me, Wo-Chien? Leech Seed. Double up into that slot, sure. Yeah, Leech Seed does not really scare me. I'm happy to just click Stomping Tantrum into Sandy Shocks, pivot the Arcanine in right now. Leech Seed isn't really that concerning, especially because you can't Terra with that anymore. So essentially, I'm just going to use Ting Lu to beat the Sandy Shocks and then finish off the game with Flutter Mane. That's why I wanted to bring Flutter Mane into this matchup. But I think it's going to be really hard for my opponent to win from this point. Like, you have to go for Protect with Sandy Shocks, right? But Wo-Chien's just not, like, really dealing damage anytime soon. They should just go for T-Bolt. Perfect. Works for me. Of course, I could have considered Grass Terra with Ting Lu. That makes me immune to the Leech Seed, but I don't really care about Leech Seed, quite frankly, because I think Flutter Mane at this point should just clean up. Alright, they go for a Pollen Puff. That's kind of cute, but it's not like they took that much damage to begin with, right? And now we get Stomping Tantrum off. Nice. That's so much damage. Yep, now I bring out Flutter Mane, and with Flutter Mane out, I think I just switch out the Ting Lu into Palafin. Fairy Terra, Dazzling Gleam. Should cover for everything. From Wo-Chien, we've seen Protect, Leech Seed, and Pollen Puff, which is, yeah, all pretty standard. I don't think really... Yeah, there's really not much my opponent can do to stop this, right? Because it's like, they're just too passive, and even if you, like, successfully got Protect off and got an attack off onto the Flutter, I could just Jet Punch the Sandy Shocks the next turn, so... Feeling very good about my position. I think the main thing in this game is that I just got a pretty huge lead. I think the Scizor greeting that initial Swords Dance and me getting that free Shadow Ball off made the game a lot harder for my opponent. So it would have been very interesting to see how this game would have played out if Bullet Punch just went off into Flutter Mane immediately, because I would have lost my best win condition against the Wo-Chien, actually. So it would have been a completely different game if it was just Bullet Punch instead of Swords Dance on turn 1. And yeah, I guess Clear Amulet is the item you should assume on Scizor when you see it, so I didn't do a great job of playing around that, which is on me. Okay, we just get Dazzling Gleam off, Fairy Terra. No booster energy boost at this point, but still fine. And that almost just one-shots Wo-Chien as well. That was a crit, though. That makes sense. Okay. What did it go for here? Leech Seed? Yeah. This is the downside with Wo-Chien. It's very passive, right? Like, Leech Seed and Pollen Puff can be incredible when you're supporting your teammate, but in this case, I just have too much damage for my opponent to break through. That being said, like, Wo-Chan's very similar to Celesteela from VGC 2017 if you played back then, where it can just stay on the field and survive for forever. And the main thing in this game that I was lucky to have was the Flutter Mane for this end game. So that's why I keep stressing, like, if my opponent just clicked Bullet Punch on turn 1, it'd be a really different game. Which means, honestly, I got outled in this game. Like, I'm not sure I love how the lead position looked. In best of 1, it's tough against Scizor, but I really do think I should be assuming Clear Amulet. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe an Arcanine lead here would have been stronger for me to pressure and kind of scout out for Clear Amulet immediately. So, like, Arcanine Palafin with Flutter, Ting Lu in the back might have been a little bit stronger with the ability to just Flare Blitz or Will-O-Wisp with Arcanine immediately. The Palafin puts on pressure against the Sandy Shocks as well. Ting Lu can switch in for either slot, which is pretty valuable, especially the Palafin, and then you can go from there. So, yeah. But ultimately, I think, like, Ting Lu, once again, was really good here, right? It kind of just single-handedly could win against the opposing Sandy Shocks, which was really nice, and getting that Stomping Tantrum off enough so that Flutter could just clean up the game was also really nice. But, yeah, that Talonflame set was really interesting. I did not think it would survive Extreme Speed plus Booster Energy boosted Shadow Ball, but it did, and it had the Ogwaff Berry, which was fascinating to me. With that, we're in Master Ball tier. Pretty cool to see over 3,000 players in the tier already, and let's just keep things going. I think... So far, you know, I played a couple games before recording this video, and a lot of the games actually looked fairly like Series 2, and so I was like, you know, it'd be nicer to go up against some more Room Pokemon to get experience, but Ting Lu was a huge part for the first game, and then obviously we went up against Wo-Chan in the last one, and now we've got Chi-Yu and Chien-Pao, so could not have asked for it any better. So we're going to go up against all 4, or have basically all 4 Room Pokemon represented in our first 3 battles of the format, which is awesome. So they have 2 obvious combos here, like Chien-Pao Dragonite plus Flutter Mane and Chi-Yu. Those are just like 2 of the strongest combos you can have, right? And then just Bundle plus Tusk, which is also really quite powerful. So this is a very hyper-offensive team. My opponent's team just aims to, you know, hit fast and KO you as quickly as possible. So what do we want to do is the question. I learned that Fairy Terra Choice Specs Moonblast can just one-shot Kingambit, which we really have to be careful about. I don't think Gambit's the right brain here. It's too slow paced, and I would probably want to like Swords Dance off before doing much more with it, but it's not that easy to execute here. I think it might be the top 4 again. Arcanine, Palafin, Flutter, plus Ting Lu. I think I could also lead with Flutter plus the Palafin, but I'm worried about their Flutter being faster than mine and then just outspeeding and Shadow Balling me immediately. I think Chi-Yu plus Flutter can always be scary, especially if we don't know what items they have. Against them, turn 1, I'd probably consider double protecting to see if Chi-Yu has Choice Scarf if it outspeeds Flutter Mane. Chien-Pao and Dragonite, though. Okay. So now my question is Dragonite Inner Focus or Multi-Scale? Sword of Rune is going to activate. There's Intimidate. Ooh! Nice. It's Multi-Scale. It's good for us. This is probably Lumburied, right? Could be Assault Vest, though. Or sorry, Choice Band. So I'm down on Will-O-Wisp, honestly. Do I want to switch? I think switching into Flutter isn't bad. It's a little bit risky, but if Flutter survives this turn, next turn I apply so much pressure with it, and I get to transform with Palafin immediately. I also thought about plays like Flare Blitz, Jet Punch, double up on a Chien-Pao to eliminate it, but Chien-Pao might have Protect. And I'm going for Will-O-Wisp here just because it might be Choice Band Dragonite. That's what a lot of people were running early on in the format with Chien-Pao. If it's not banned, that's fine. Sorry, yeah, if you're Lumberry, that's fine because it means I intimidated you, so you don't do that much damage. I guess my fear is if they like somehow doubled up into the Flutter Mane slot, but we'll see. Either way, we transform. They're staying in here. Protect Chien-Pao would be ideal to see here. Dragonite switches, that makes sense. Into Chi-Yu. Okay. Nice play. They went Ice Spinner onto the Palafin. Wow. That's an incredible play by them. Nicely done. Very well done. That was like a hard read. It's very impressive. I think here I ideally want to double up on a Chi-Yu, like Extreme Speed plus Moonblast onto it. It might be Scarf Chi-Yu, we'll see. Mainly because I think Flare Blitz on a Chien-Pao feels like the obvious play. So Flare Blitz plus the Jet Punch play I was talking about before locking in my moves actually would have worked out there, but I really didn't expect Ice Spinner into that slot, so that was just a great play by my opponent. But it's fine. I think, like, at the end of the day, we still transform Chi-Yu, which is really important, obviously. Sorry, Palafin, not Chi-Yu. Okay, Chien-Pao switches, nice. Question is if it's Scarf Chi-Yu or whether or not they consider protecting here. Okay, there's Extreme Speed. Nice. Huge swing back into our favor. 3-3 now. Palafin's transformed, but they, of course, have reset that Intimidate on Dragonite, and they get a free switch and back into Chien-Pao if they want. Now, I could have clicked Dazzling Gleam there as well, but I really wanted to just guarantee the knockout onto the Chi-Yu there. Wanted to cover for bulky variants. I guess this is pretty interesting, right? Because it's like Flutter is applying a ton of pressure. You can't really knock out both easily. Now I've got Ting Lu in the back. Personally down to go for Will-O-Wisp onto the Dragonite slot and then Dazzling Gleam. Could be Sucker Punch on the Chien-Pao. I think switching out Arcanine was also worth considering here. I think switching it into Ting Lu makes decent sense, but we're going to see a Terra here, okay. Dragonite Terra, flying, normal. It is flying Terra, okay. I'm okay with that. I mean, like, Palafin is looking really strong right now. Alright, Chien-Pao speeds us here. So it's going to finish us off with Ice Spinner. It's fine, though, but now my question is, are you... It's probably Lumberry then, right? I won't find out because I miss Will-O-Wisp. Ah, that's a big miss. Just because I lose information from that as well, but that's okay. I don't know my damage calcs here. I don't know if that one-shots without Choice Band. I really wish I could find out. Okay. That makes this game really challenging now. It's the downside of having a slower Flutter Mane as well. So Arcanine pivoting out into Ting Lu and sacrificing it probably would have been better for me, because then I just get a free Intimidate off, and Arcanine plus Palafin would have been better. So yeah, that turn wasn't great on my end. I just wish I knew whether or not they needed the, like whether or not it's banded. I think here I'm going to go Protect. Ruination. If I were my opponent, I would actually double up on a Ting Lu, personally. Can't really get around it. I think Protect Ruination gives me the chance to still win if they split their attacks, but if I were my opponent, I would just double up on a Ting Lu. And I can't defensively Terra here either. Grass doesn't help against Ice plus Flying. Oh, they went for Sucker, though. Okay, nice. Woo! The double up on a Palafin, that's huge. Please don't miss Ruination. Nice. That also breaks multi-skill. So now, we Water Terra, Jet Punch into you, and Heavy Slam into you. That was huge. Yeah, like, the main reason I was thinking my opponent would double up on a Ting Lu is because Assault Vest is so common on it. And if you do just double up into there with Terra Blast plus Spinner, I probably just lose immediately. But now I can Terra, your defense is dropped. I have Transformed, Mystic Water, Water Terra plus the defense drop. So I think all of that added up allows me to KO Dragonite. Really hope so. Let's find out. Either way, there's the Terra. They go for another Sucker Punch. Jeez, that does a lot. 90 damage. I think Jet Punch should KO here. Yep. Should be Focus Sash on that, right? I guess what's interesting about my opponent's team is like almost every Pokemon wants Sash. They have Flutter, they have Bundle, Tusk, Chien-Pao. Ooh. Heavy does not get the KO there. Actually just falls short, okay. Well, Flutter Mane's my opponent's last one, which I could Heavy Slam. Can I get any information on what items they have? If I protect here, is it a throw? If they double up on a Ting Lu, potentially. I prefer, like, Jet Punch here, and then Heavy Slam here. Okay, they don't protect, nice. That should be game over, then. I don't think Flutter wins a 2v1 here, because we should survive with both Pokemon, even if you're sashed. We should be okay. Yeah, Dazzle should not KO Palafin here. Beautiful. Let's go, Ting Lu. And Heavy Slam just gets the one-hit KO. This Pokemon is an absolute beast. Nice. Yeah, I think the main thing in this one was the fact that, like, the Ting Lu just was relatively unchecked when my opponent had Dragonite plus the Chien-Pao combo potentially against me there. The one turn I'd say I really, like, didn't love in this game from my end was when I lost the Flutter Mane immediately to the Ice Spinner, and then I also just, like, the Dragonite Terrat in front of me. I do actually want to do that damage calc against the Dragonite because I'm super curious about how it matches up into Arcanine, specifically Flying Terra Blast with Chien-Pao's defense drop. So pulling up the damage calc, Terra Blast from max attack Terra Flying Dragonite against Arcanine does 76 to 90.3%. So yeah, that's with Sword of Rune and with the Terra, and that's still not enough to knock out the Arcanine. But if you throw the Choice Band onto it, which is what I was talking about earlier, then that Terra Blast is a guaranteed knockout, doing 226 to 266 HP, which is 115% to 135%. So yeah, that's where, like, missing the Will-O-Wisp actually then I think was a pretty big deal. It ended up being okay because of them doubling up into the Palafin slot the turn that I protected with it. But yeah, obviously if we had gotten that Will-O-Wisp off, then we also break the multi-scale on the opposing end. We knew it was an inner focus, of course, because they did eat up that Intimidate, and that opens the game a little bit more open for us as well. And so yeah, in the end it ended up working out because they ended up doubling into Palafin, but this was a good calc to know, since I honestly had no idea what this calc looked like if you did not have the Choice Band. And so it's good to see that Terra Blast here would not have knocked out the Arcanine. So yeah. Alright, next match here, and we've got Talonflame, Garchomp, Chien-Pao, Farigiraf, Arcanine, and Flutter Mane. So Wolf, Glick, and Aaron Trailer competed in the very first regionals of Regulation C at Fort Wayne Regionals, which took place in the first weekend of April, and they had 5 of the 6 same mons. I believe it was Iron Hands over Arcanine, but the idea is that, like, Talonflame, Garchomp, you can just Tailwind plus Earthquake immediately. I don't know if the Garchomp here has Clear Amulet, but that's what Aaron was running with Wolf, and that makes my Arcanine significantly less valuable. Especially because it's oh, you know what's interesting? Because it's Flying Terra, it's actually not completely invaluable. Because I could just Flying Terra as they Earthquake and burn Garchomp. Actually worth considering. I haven't brought Amoonguss out today at all. It just doesn't feel great. Gambit's not bad in this matchup. Like, dark coverage is actually incredible. Personally thinking Arcanine, Palafin, Ting Lu, Flutter. Maybe it should be Gambit over Flutter. I think Flutter's the safer pick, but I feel like Gambit could put in work in this matchup, especially because that team doesn't have Iron Hands, which, you know, Aaron and Wolf had on their version of this. So, we'll see. Part of the reasoning for this is because I'm bringing Ting Lu, and so obviously can counteract my own Flutter a little bit. But the idea is if they lead Garchomp turn 1, I'm going to protect Palafin, Terra, Arcanine, and just Will-O-Wisp into Garchomp. There's Garchomp immediately. So we'll see if it's Clear Amulet here. Yep. That's fine, though. I covered for this by... Like, they could Rock Slide Flinch. I'm actually worried about, like, I don't know, Ice Spinner Arcanine here. But I want a Terra Flying WoW and a Garchomp. Contemplating a switch here as well. Just to get Palafin out. I think conserving Ting Lu for the late game might be worth it. I'm not a switch out. The reason for this is because often on these teams, the Chien-Pao is Flying Terra, so I could see Flying Terra coming out immediately and then Earthquake coming out, and obviously don't want Gambit to just eat up an Earthquake. So even though Vessel of Ruin isn't really relevant right now, that's fine. Yeah, they're going to go for a Terra to start. It's fine. Flying Terra? Nope. Oh, Fire Terra would be bad news. Oh, I should have thought about that. That's fine, though. Not Chien-Pao. Palafin now can just hit it for super effective damage. So it could be worse. Good play, though. Very good play. The upside is that Ting Lu now hits that for super effective as well. So I can, for example, this next turn just go Protect plus Earthquake for a lot of damage. Oh, sorry, I can't Protect with Arcanine. Extreme Speed Earthquake. And they just go for Protect. Okay, so if they're just Earthquaking with Garchomp here, honestly not a bad turn one. Could be a lot worse. I guess my question is, how much does Ting Lu take from this? But it's Fire Terra. Yeah, not too bad. The problem is the potential Ice Spinner play now. You're at -1. Like Ice Spinner, but then you can't Earthquake at this point. Otherwise, you'd hit your own Chien-Pao. I'm down to Extreme Speed into Garchomp. So then it's in Jet Punch KO range. And this is a little risky. I'm actually thinking about clicking Earthquake here. Nah, I don't think that's smart. I think it's better to just click Heavy Slam. Because they could protect Garchomp and then attack Chien-Pao. Great damage from E-Speed. You get Rough Skin, sure. Rock Slide plus Ice Spinner would make a lot of sense here. Okay. Go for Dragon Claw, that's fine. Free switching into Palafin now, which is what I'm looking for. So, I pressure with Jet Punch now onto the Garchomp slot. Here's the problem for me. I have not covered for Farigiraf switching in right now. Ugh. Do we think they brought Farigiraf? I honestly think they should. Otherwise, they're so weak to Palafin. We bring out Farigiraf, though. Like, Dragon Claw and Rock Slide don't really do that much anyway. But, like, I think I want to Flare Blitz. This is a big decision, whether or not I Jet Punch or Wave Crash. I think I'm going to go for the KO and just go for Wave Crash. Okay, Chien-Pao switches. Show me Farigiraf. Nice. And now, this, if we knock out Garchomp, it puts Kingambit in a position to thrive in this match. They go for Rock Slide. Actually misses Palafin, so no flinch chance, which is really nice. I get crit on Arcanine in return. I'll take a crit in trade of no flinch, though. Gladly. And a burn, so talk about a turn of RNG. We saw a miss, a crit, and a burn. Almost every secondary effect you could ask for. But yeah, the main thing this turn was not falling for the Farigiraf switch in, right? We just knocked out Garchomp cleanly, which is huge. I've got Kingambit, which is really quite solid against the Farigiraf. Chien-Pao has only revealed Ice Spinner so far, pretty much, and Protect. The question is whether or not it has Sacred Sword, because if so, Gambit obviously is a lot weaker against it. And I can't Extreme Speed right now with Arcanine either. Like, Farigiraf's quite good into everything we've brought here, right? So where conserving Ting Lu may have been more valuable for me. Flutter switches in. I think against this, I don't mind just Flare Blitzing into Flutter Mane and protecting. Yeah, I think ultimately I should have conserved Ting Lu better in this match. Just don't know really how. That's a great protect as well. I don't know how fast the Farigiraf is going to be relative to Palafin. Oh, it's actually just a protect all around. Okay, never mind. I guess that works out decently well. No booster on Flutter, though, so I'm curious about the item choice on that Pokemon. and whether or not like Flutter actually KOs Palafin right now. I actually really don't like my positioning. Unless Flare Blitz KOs Farigiraf, because I think I could Flare Blitz here and then switch Palafin out into Kingambit. The idea is to KO Farigiraf with Flare Blitz plus Burn and then get my priority back activated. But yeah, like Ting Lu would have been incredible against this duo right now, so can't help but think I didn't play well with the Ting Lu in this one. Oh. I definitely didn't expect that. That's probably game over. Yeah. Nicely conserved. Life Orb on the Flutter then. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That play pretty much always wins against me then. It covered for everything I could have done in that position. I think, like, the main thing was Fire Terra, which I really should expect, but yeah, I tried to, you know, get fancy there. Flying Terra wasn't that valuable for me. Didn't get the burn off into Garchomp. Garchomp put in a lot of offense. Our best bet here would be wave crashing into this and protecting and hoping to survive Helping Hand Dazzling. Or we could hope for a misplay and then expect them to go for, like, Helping Hand Moonblast, protect the Palafin, and then, like, Kowtow Cleave. They did just Dazzling, so... I don't think we can win, though, because even if we were to survive, I'd faint from the Wave Crash recoil. Yeah, Palafin did survive. So... But I don't think I could win anyway if I had stayed in with Palafin last turn. This turn... I guess there's a world in which I don't protect. But, yeah. Unless their Chien-Pao in the back does not have Sacred Sword. Like, I think Aaron and Wolf's version had... Haze, Ice Spinner, Protect, and I think it was a Dark type attack. I don't remember. I feel like the Pokemon choice-wise here was fine, but I could have executed it a little bit better. I guess my own Flutter would have actually been okay here. Would it have been? It would potentially just be slower against the opposing side, right? So probably not. But yeah, you can see how good Farigiraf was here, right? Like, blocking priority from Arcanine, Palafin, and Kingambit was incredible. Yeah, it was just Ice Spinner. This probably KOs, though, with the defense drop. Actually doesn't. Yeah, but we don't do enough in return. I think part of the problem for me was Arcanine not having Protect in this game as well, and so, like, the Flutter Mane being pretty well positioned for a Dazzling endgame. I mainly think about the turn that I gave up Ting Lu and a double up one into that slot, whether or not I could have played better there. But yeah, nicely done by my opponent. I thought, like, they played with Garchomp super well, like, going for that Will-O-Wisp immediately. Wonder if we would have had a better shot if the Rock Slide did not crit the Arcanine, because I know it had more HP enough where maybe I can actually survive a Helping Hand Life Orb Dazzling Gleam. But they did obviously get the Rock Slide miss onto the Palafin as well. Amoonguss is interesting for this one, for Spore and healing. Like, it's tough, because the Terra isn't amazing for us here, but I think even a single Spore against either Chien-Pao or Garchomp could really pay dividends. I think the main thing was I just, like, was thinking in this game, oh, the easy solution against Garchomp is to burn it by Flying Terra, but then they had a Terra to, like, defensively react to me as well. I wonder if I could have considered staying in with Palafin instead then, because if Palafin had stayed in and protected on turn 1, turn 2 I pressure with Jet Punch immediately, or just Terra Wave Crash immediately into the Garchomp slot. That would have allowed me to conserve Ting Lu for the end game, and that could have been a little bit stronger for me. So, yeah. Nicely played by my opponent, though. So, yeah. That's going to wrap up our very first Regulation C video, and yeah, honestly, it featured all of the different room Pokemon, and as you can see, they are very meta-relevant, and the team I'm playing here, I think, is just one of the most consistent meta-relevant teams you can try out for this format. That's why I wanted to start off with it, and so, yeah, definitely a fun start into the format, and excited to see how the metagame develops in the upcoming days and weeks. So, thanks so much, as always, for joining me. If you enjoyed, really appreciate if you consider leaving a like. It really helps me out a ton, and I'll see you all next time. All right, peace.